and a romance that never quite fits into the shape of the world around it. It begins like so many things do, quietly, unexpectedly, with a glance, a gesture, a routine left undisturbed for too long. But this isn't the kind of love built on candlelight and certainty. This is the kind that drifts between what's spoken and what's imagined, between the real and the almost. There's connection here, longing, a need to be seen, and maybe to stay unseen. But when the distance between two people becomes more than just miles, when reality itself begins to stretch and fray, what chance does love have? Can something fragile survive in a place that won't hold still? Or is it only ever meant to echo, faint and flickering, on a frequency just out of reach? This is Tilted Frame, and our story is titled Infrequency.
I used to commute to work every single day. And in New York, that's not unusual. 90% of us do it, moving like clockwork, packed into trains, buses, sidewalks. The other 10%? They're the ones behind the wheel, driving the MTA buses, steering yellow cabs, manning the underground. We're a city in motion, always on our way somewhere. Back then, I lived in a small apartment in Canarsie, Brooklyn, worked for a law firm in Midtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Law had once been the dream, courtroom battles, justice, the whole order in the court fantasy. But like the old cliche goes, life happens. And in my case, it happened without even a courtesy warning. For 5 years straight, my routine never changed. The B-42 up Rockaway Parkway, transfer at Canarsie Rockaway, then the long subway crawl into Manhattan, day in, day out. And over time, you start to notice things. The same people, the same tired eyes, you nod at each other, maybe share a smirk when the train lurches. It's quiet companionship, strangers bound by routine. And then one day, I saw her. She was late. I could tell by the way she ran. Hair wild, coat flaring behind her, bag bouncing against her side. She made the stop on Avenue N just in time, breathless, flushed. And in that moment, something happened. My heart. It didn't just skip a beat, it stumbled. She was my type. Not just in the way she looked, though yes, she was beautiful. It was something else, something quieter. The way she carried herself, like her mind was always somewhere else. Like her eyes were holding on to secrets no one had earned. For the first few days, I just observed. I studied her patterns, guessed which seat she'd take, tried to make it seem casual. I'm not the stalker type, don't get me wrong. I'm actually pretty shy when it comes to dating, or even meeting new people. Selective is what my friends used to call it. I'd had a few girlfriends in the past, nothing long-term, but I was getting older and maybe a bit braver. Something about her pulled me forward. Eventually, one morning, I worked up the courage. The seat beside her was miraculously empty. I sat down, heart pounding like I was back in high school, minutes away from presenting in front of the class. I took a deep breath and said, "Hello?" She didn't respond. In fact, her head jerked slightly as she looked around, not at me, but at the entire bus. She scanned the aisle, the faces, the windows. Then her gaze drifted past me and settled on the street outside. It was like I didn't exist. At first, I thought maybe she had a hearing issue, or maybe she was lost in thought. But then I remembered. Just 3 days earlier, she'd been laughing and chatting with an older man who'd sat beside her. She'd been friendly, engaged. I'd noticed that. Remember, I'd been paying attention. So this felt off. Still, I let it go. Maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe she didn't hear me. I tried to convince myself of that, but something kept gnawing at me. The next morning, I tried again. "Hello," I said, a bit louder, leaning slightly in her direction. That's when everything went sideways. She froze. Her face went pale, and a flicker of fear ran through her expression. She looked around again, panicked this time, scanning the bus like she was searching for something. Or someone. She yanked the stop cord and shoved past me, rushing toward the back exit. Her movement was frantic, like someone who had just realized they were being followed. The bus lurched to a halt. She got off in a blur and disappeared into the street. Everyone on the bus noticed. The mood shifted. Eyes met. Whispers started. I just sat there, stunned. I felt awful. Had I done something wrong? Had she felt threatened? Was she okay? My mind spiraled. Maybe she had a history with abuse. Maybe I looked like someone from her past. Maybe I reminded her of something terrible. Maybe she was ill. I wished I had just kept the crush to myself. A few days passed. Monday came. I wasn't sure what to expect. But there she was, back on the bus, as if nothing had happened. She sat beside another young woman that day. They didn't speak, but then again, this was New York. People mostly keep to themselves now, buried in their phones and earbuds, insulated from human interaction. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Weeks went by. Our commute settled into a strange rhythm again, distant stares, accidental proximity. Then one day, something changed. She boarded the bus with visible bruises on her face. Not fresh ones. They were already yellowing, fading into the skin. The kind that looked like they'd been hidden for a few days. That morning, she took a seat near the back exit. Oddly, as the bus began to fill, she gave up her spot for an elderly woman and stood, holding onto the overhead rail. I was sitting a few rows away, and I stood up as well. A small act of kindness. A peace offering, maybe. I gestured to my seat and softly asked, "Would you like to sit?" She turned to me. This time, her eyes met mine. Really met mine. And she held the stare, like she was finally tuning in to the frequency of my voice. We both stood there, frozen in a strange kind of standoff. It felt like something out of an old Western movie, minus the tumbleweeds. Then she whispered, "Who are you?" Her voice was barely audible. We were close, surrounded by the usual noise and chatter of a packed New York City bus, but I heard her clearly. I don't know how, but I did. I replied softly, "My name is Michael O'Connor." Her reaction was instantaneous, a visible jolt, like she'd been shocked. Her whole body stiffened. "Are you okay?" I asked. She looked side to side again, scanning for eavesdroppers, then whispered, "Yes, I am." I hesitated, then extended my hand. "What's your name?" She ignored the hand, but answered, "Mary Ann." And just like that, a name, a crack in the glass, something was starting. She remained very still, perplexed, as if I were the first person who had ever spoken directly to her. It was comical in a way, maybe even cute, but undeniably strange. I asked again, gently, "Are you okay?" "I am," she whispered. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her. Then, maybe a bit too directly, I asked, "Did you fall? Or did someone try to hurt you?" She didn't answer right away. Her hand rose unconsciously to her cheek, covering the fading bruise as if the memory had surfaced the pain all over again. Her fingers lingered there, soft, almost protective. But before she could respond, my stop came up. I stood and stepped past her, pausing just long enough to say, "It was nice meeting you." She didn't reply. Her eyes remained distant, and her hands stayed pressed gently to her face. She seemed lost in a trance, replaying something I couldn't see. For the next week or so, she vanished. I scanned the faces on the bus each morning, hoping for a glimpse of her, but nothing. I wondered if she'd started taking a different bus, or a different schedule altogether. Maybe I'd been too forward. Maybe I scared her off. Eventually, she reappeared. Same bus, same route. I didn't speak to her immediately. I gave it time, gave her space. I made myself a quiet promise. If she seemed withdrawn again, if anything felt wrong or forced, I wouldn't keep trying. I'd let it go. But then something unexpected happened. She sat beside me, on purpose, I think. She passed open seats and chose the one next to me, in the back, where I always sat. I had my reasons for sitting back there. After a bad car accident years ago, I developed a lingering fear of riding on the streets. I'd read somewhere that the back of a bus was the safest spot, and so that's where I parked myself every morning. She sat quietly, holding her things close. A small purse and a worn backpack balanced neatly on her lap. I gave it a few minutes, then gently asked, "How have you been?" Her eyes stayed low, scanning the floor like she was searching for courage. Then she looked up, glanced around the bus, and whispered, "I've been feeling better." That morning, for the first time, we talked. Or rather, I talked, and she whispered. She told me she was attending a career college in Crown Heights. She had originally wanted to study human behavior, psychology, maybe social work. But the program was too long, too expensive. She switched to something more practical, something quicker, dental assisting. She said it was stable, respectable, and she liked working with her hands. I told her about myself, that I worked at a law firm in Midtown, and that I still held on to the dream, however dim, of one day becoming a lawyer. She smiled, then laughed softly. I found her laugh beautiful, light, but a little surprised, like it had been hiding for a while. Over the days that followed, we began to know each other. Our conversations deepened. Her voice grew stronger. She stopped whispering. She started laughing more, smiling. There was still a guardedness in her, but the walls were coming down, one by one. Finally, on a Thursday, I asked if she wanted to go out that weekend. She said yes. That Saturday, I took her to Prospect Park. We strolled the winding paths of the Botanic Garden, pausing at the koi pond and sitting beneath the cherry blossoms. Later, we visited the zoo. She loved the sea lions and the red pandas, and she kept leaning over the railing like a curious kid. There was a softness to her that day, something open and rare. We talked a lot, and she listened, really listened. Not the nod along kind of listening, but the kind where her eyes locked onto yours, and she soaked in every word. I'd never met anyone like her. Later, as we sat on a bench beneath a tall oak tree, she told me the truth about her bruises. It was her sister. She said it carefully, without bitterness, like she had rehearsed the line many times before. Her sister was struggling with emotional and psychological problems. One night, after a small argument, she lashed out. Mary Ann didn't fight back. She didn't scream. She just took the blows. She told her parents she'd fallen, not to protect herself, but to protect her sister. She didn't want her to get into trouble. She said, she needs help, not punishment. I remember staring at her in that moment, struck by the quiet strength in her. I reached for her hand. I saw you that morning, I told her, running to the stop on Avenue N. You looked like a whirlwind, like you were chasing something important. You made an impression on me, even before you spoke. She blushed, a deep red rising in her cheeks, and she squeezed my hand tighter. Then she stopped, turned to face me, and kissed me. It was slow, gentle, but it held everything. The fear, the trust, the hesitation, and the hope. In that kiss, something shifted, something opened, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. There wasn't a huge age gap between us. 5 years, give or take. But for some reason, people always stared when we were out in public. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I was just self-conscious. But over time, I noticed it more and more. The sidelong glances, the lingering looks, the judgment hanging in the silence. Oddly enough, Mary Ann seemed unfazed, more comfortable than I was, actually. One afternoon, I finally asked her about it. She shrugged. People get uncomfortable seeing others show affection in public, she said. Sometimes it's jealousy, sometimes it's because they're prudes, or just judgmental. She said it so plainly, like she'd thought about it before. And honestly, it made sense. I let it go after that. We kept our world small by choice. All our dates happened outdoors. Mary Ann didn't like crowded places. Movie theaters, shopping malls, loud restaurants. She'd get quiet and anxious in groups. I never pressed her about it. I didn't mind. We were both happiest when we were walking, free, in the open air. Washington Square Park became one of our favorite spots. We'd sit for hours watching street performers and jazz musicians, or just people watch, guessing their lives, their conversations. It was fun, comfortable, and Central Park, especially in the summer, felt like our little sanctuary. We'd find a quiet patch of grass, lay side by side, and let the city hum around us like white noise. Those were some of the happiest days I can remember. The topic of family came up often. Slowly, Mary Ann opened up. What I gathered was this. Her parents were preoccupied, consumed, really, by her sister's illness. The emotional weight of caring for someone unstable had drained the entire household. And somewhere along the way, Mary Ann had become invisible. The forgotten child. The quiet one who didn't ask for much and got even less. She told me this without bitterness, just fact. It explained a lot. The guardedness, the whispers, the careful distance she kept from people. I could relate in my own way. Not as deeply, maybe, but I understood the shape of loneliness. A few years earlier, I had lost both my parents in a car crash. The same accident that left me with my fear of street vehicles. My father died on impact. My mother passed away in the hospital 3 days later. I was the only one who walked away. When I told Mary Ann, she didn't say anything at first. Her eyes filled with tears. Then, without hesitation, she reached over and placed her hand gently on my chest, just over my heart, as if trying to feel the rhythm of my grief. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. That moment stayed with me. Later that fall, I asked if she'd like me to meet her parents. Maybe I could be a distraction for them, lighten the mood, take some pressure off. But she was quick to say no, not yet. It wasn't the right time. I respected that. Not long after, she told me we probably wouldn't see each other as often in the coming months. Her school schedule was changing, classes were shifting, winter was approaching, and the cold made it harder to spend long hours outdoors, which had always been our default. Part of me wondered, quietly, selfishly, if I had been just a summer fling, a passing presence during a warm season. But she sensed that thought before I even voiced it. "You're not," she said one evening, her voice soft but firm. "You're not just something for now. You bring me peace. I feel safe with you." It meant the world to hear that. We had never rushed anything, not even intimacy. In fact, it hadn't really come up between us. And when it did, she'd mention that it wasn't something she prioritized. Not right now, not with where she was in life. You'd think, being a young guy, I'd be frustrated. But I wasn't. Truthfully, I found it freeing. There was something reassuring in knowing that this thing between us didn't depend on physicality. It was emotional, quiet, steady, real. Soon, the weather began to shift. Sunset crept earlier into the evening, the breeze grew cooler, sharper. The sidewalks filled with coats and scarves, and the parks emptied a little more each day. The season was changing. The messengers of winter were arriving. Crisp winds, darker skies, all reminders that summer was packing up and leaving us behind. But I wasn't ready to let go. Not of her, not of this. Not yet. Eventually, the world kept turning, as it always does. And as predicted, I started seeing less and less of Marianne. We had always shared a quiet rebellion against the modern world. No social media, no smartphones. Neither of us owned one, a rarity, especially for a couple in 2025. But we believed in privacy, in presence, in preserving time rather than feeding it to the endless scroll. I still had a landline at home, though I rarely touched it. We relied on coincidence, routine, and a kind of unspoken trust. Our only true points of contact were the bus rides and the occasional meeting near her school when time allowed. But the colder it got, the more things shifted. A distance began forming between us. Not dramatic, just quiet, like fog between buildings. She wasn't on the bus as often, sometimes not at all. I told myself it was school or the weather or family, but deep down I worried. I wanted more, to be a bigger part of her life, not just a passing face on the commute. I wanted to see her, to know she was okay, to hold her hand and hear her voice, even if it was in a whisper. And then, for a few days, she vanished entirely. No bus, no school, nothing. I told myself to be patient, but I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. So I did something bold, or reckless, depending on how you see it. I decided to go to her house. I told myself I'd be discreet, that I wouldn't introduce myself as her boyfriend. She had made it clear that she wasn't ready for that. So I rehearsed a cover story. I would pose as a concerned classmate, dropping off a notebook, maybe some missed assignments. It would be simple. No pressure, just a gesture of care. It took me days to work up the nerve. Marianne had once described her house to me. It was on East 92nd Street, the only half-yellow house. I laughed when she told me that. In a neighborhood filled with brick facades and neutral paints, that house stood out. She explained it with a fond smile. Her father had painted the bottom half yellow to remind her mother of the house they'd stayed in during their honeymoon in Italy. I loved that story. It felt like something from a movie, sentimental and slightly out of place. As I approached the house, my nerves got louder. I expected a bit of anxiety, of course, but this felt different, sharper. Was it fear of rejection? Fear of overstepping? Not just from her, but from her parents too? I tried to shake it off. I climbed the short set of stairs to the porch and knocked gently. No barking dogs, no sudden movement inside, but I could tell people were home. I caught a glimpse of someone in the kitchen, and the low murmur of a television drifted through the windows. I waited, then knocked again. A few minutes passed. Nothing. I hesitated. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I'd crossed a line. Maybe she'd never even told her family I existed. But I couldn't just leave. Not yet. I walked down the narrow driveway, the cold wind curling around me, and made my way toward the back of the house. And there she was, Marianne, sitting on the steps of the back porch, curled over a book, completely still, her long coat wrapped around her legs, her hair tucked into a loose-knit hat. The sight of her sent a shockwave through me. My heart stuttered. A rush of adrenaline surged through my chest and out into my fingertips. I called her name, soft, tentative. She turned sharply, startled, the same way she had looked at me the first few times on the bus. That wide-eyed, distant fear. But then her expression softened, a flicker of recognition, a slight smile. She stood and stepped forward, bringing her finger to her lips in a quiet hush. I obeyed. Quiet as ever, still as the trees. She reached me and stood close, not speaking, just looking at me. And I waited, quietly thrilled, nervous, and full of questions. I reached for her hands, and she reached for mine. A simple gesture, personal, grounding, and somehow very necessary in that moment. The cold stung the tips of our fingers, but neither of us pulled away. We spoke quietly. She explained that her sister had been unwell again, and between school and the responsibilities at home, she barely had time to breathe. I knew what it meant to have a life slowly overtaken by someone else's needs. The wind picked up slightly. I rubbed my hands together and asked, "Is anyone home?" She hesitated only a second, then said, "Everyone's here." Inside me, something stirred. Hope, maybe. A silent wish that she'd invite me in, that she'd want to take this moment further. And then, movement from the house. A curtain shifted. Her mother appeared at the window, peering down at us. Her eyes scanned the scene. Marianne and I standing in the yard, our hands gently clasped over the rusted metal fence. There went my cover story. No more pretending to be a classmate. No more safe illusions. This was real now, and there would be questions. The curtain dropped. A few seconds later, the back door creaked open. "Marianne, who are you talking to?" her mother called out. She let go of my hands and turned back toward the house. "No one, Mom," she replied. I froze, confused. What did she mean, no one? I was right here, standing in the yard, visible, clearly seen. Her mother had looked directly at us through the window. And yet, that response seemed to satisfy her. "Come inside, honey," her mother said. "It's cold." Marianne turned back toward me, reached for my hands again. I pulled back slightly. "Didn't your mom see me?" I asked. "Why would she ask who you were talking to, and then just accept that answer?" Marianne gave a small, lopsided smile, almost playful. "My mom is half blind," she said. Then, after a pause, "Would you like to meet my folks? And my sister?" I blinked. Was this really happening? The cold wind biting at my skin was no longer the motivation to go inside. Meeting her family, being accepted, brought in. That was reason enough. I smiled. "Absolutely. I'd love that. Though, what should I say? I mean, who should I be?" She laughed. "Tell them you're Michael, silly. Just kidding. My boyfriend, of course." She opened the gate and we stepped through. A gust of wind sweeping across my face like a final whisper of doubt. But I ignored it. My hand was in hers. That was all that mattered. We made our way through the back porch and into the house. It was warm, cozy. The scent of dinner filled the air. Garlic, bread, something baking. The kind of smell that made you feel instantly like you belonged somewhere. Marianne's father was in the living room, eyes fixed on the TV. Her mother had disappeared into the kitchen. I leaned close and whispered, "What are your parents' names?" She didn't answer. Instead, she kept holding my hand and led me through the narrow hallway toward the kitchen. "Mom?" she said gently. "Yes, honey?" her mother replied, still out of sight. "I want you to meet someone." Her mother turned to us as we entered. She looked like an older version of Marianne, beautiful in a faded, soft kind of way. She had kind eyes, a gentle smile. She looked straight past me, then back at Marianne. "Honey," she said carefully, "have you been taking your medication this week?" The air shifted. I blinked. My stomach turned. Had I been ignored? But then I remembered what Marianne had said. Half blind. Maybe she didn't see me clearly. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding. But Marianne's tone suddenly changed. Sharper now. Pleading. "Mom, why didn't you say hello?" she asked. "I told you, I want you to meet Michael." Her voice quivered slightly. She turned her head and called out, "Frank, come here right away, please." Footsteps. A chair creaking pushed back. Her father's voice. "What is it, Barbara?" He was approaching fast. Then, from the kitchen, calmly, firmly, her mother spoke. "Marianne is hallucinating again. Can you check her meds? Make sure she's been taking them." Silence crashed through my body. The footsteps didn't stop. And then, her father appeared. Gray hair, large frame, stern expression. He didn't even glance at me. He walked straight through the narrow kitchen space and passed through me. Not around me, through me. My heart pounded. My breath caught in my throat. It was as if I wasn't there at all, like I was a ghost. As I stood there, frozen in the middle of the kitchen, trying to process what had just happened, Marianne grabbed my hand. Her fingers were cold but urgent, trembling with purpose. Without a word, she pulled me toward the stairs. We moved quickly, quietly, the house around us still warm but suddenly strange. We reached her room. She yanked the door open and dragged me inside. I barely had time to blink before she slammed it shut with a violence that made the walls shake. I stared at her. "What is happening?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She said nothing. Instead, she clamped both hands tightly over her ears and began to shake her head, fast and frantic. Then she started slamming it again and again against the wooden door. "Marianne!" I shouted, rushing forward. I grabbed her shoulders and pulled her back. A fresh streak of red bloomed from her eyebrow. A small cut, not deep. She turned around and collapsed into my arms, sobbing against my chest, her whole body shaking with exhaustion and pain. I held her. I had no words. I just held her. Then the sound came from behind the door. Her father's voice, low but breaking. "Marianne, open the door, please." He knocked once, then again. His voice was trembling, not with anger, but with anguish, concern, fear. "Sweetheart," he begged, "let me in, please." She said nothing. She just cried harder. Footsteps approached. Her mother now. I heard the keys, the metallic sound of them jingling nervously, then the slow, almost ceremonial turning of the knob. The door opened. Both of her parents stood in the threshold, faces pale, eyes wide, their bodies folding inward from the weight of their own helplessness. Then they saw her, saw the blood, the bedding, the carpet. Her mother gasped softly. Her father stepped forward instinctively. I backed away into the far corner of the room, as far as I could, instinctively giving them space, the kind of space that families need in moments of crisis. I wasn't family, not now, maybe not ever. Marianne crawled onto the bed, curled into the fetal position. Her sobs grew softer, but somehow deeper, more painful. Her blood was soaking into the blankets now, blooming in red halos beneath her head, and staining the edge of the mattress. Her father's voice broke the silence again, trembling but full of love. "What's the matter, Mary? What's happening, my love? Why do you keep hurting yourself like this?" She looked up, eyes swollen, voice raspy. "I'm tired," she whispered. "I'm tired of being ignored, of always being second, of feeling like I don't exist." Her words hit the room like a wave. "I brought Michael into this house because I needed you to see him, to see me. I wanted this to be normal, just for once. I wanted you to welcome him, treat him like a part of our lives. But Mom," she paused, choked on the next words. "Mom ruined it. Asking about my medication, like I'm broken, like he's not even standing in the room. You both ignored him, both of you." She let out a small, wounded scream, sharp, like a wounded animal, then collapsed back into herself. Her father moved quickly, kneeling beside the bed, arms wrapping around her. He didn't care about the blood soaking into his shirt. He held her tightly, whispering words I couldn't hear. Her mother knelt too, at the foot of the bed, her hand softly stroking the side of Marianne's leg, slow, steady, maternal. But her face showed something else. Exhaustion, deep, cellular exhaustion, the kind that years of emotional strain had carved into her. This wasn't new. This wasn't rare. This was a cycle, a routine, and it was wearing her down. I stood in the corner, silent, invisible, still, like I didn't belong there, like I hadn't ever belonged. And my mind kept circling back to that moment in the kitchen. Had her parents really not seen me? Marianne continued, her voice rising through the tears. "I don't understand why my sister gets everything, all the attention, all the comfort, just because she's sick. I'm still your daughter, I'm still here, but you confuse us, like I'm the one who's sick, like the medications are mine." She turned sharply to her mother. "Why did you do that? Why would you say that in front of Michael? I'm so embarrassed." Her voice cracked, then hardened. "Everyone get out. Out of my room. Michael, you too, just go." I stood frozen, petrified. My lips went numb, and the area around them tingled like static. My mouth was bone dry, my saliva thick and foamy, difficult to swallow. I didn't move. I didn't know how to. And then I heard the most relieving words. Her mother, still kneeling near the bed, took her husband by the hand, then looked, unmistakably, in my direction. "Let's go, Michael," she said softly. "Let's give her some space." I was stunned. She had seen me, spoken to me, acknowledged me. I followed behind them, the last to exit the room. As I passed Marianne, I gently reached out, trying to brush her arm in comfort, in farewell, something. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. Her body was still, her eyes glassy and distant, like she was staring into a place I couldn't reach. She wasn't asleep, but she wasn't entirely awake either. She was gone, somewhere else. And then, as I followed her parents down the hallway, I noticed something in her mother's hand, a syringe. She had injected something into Marianne, a sedative, something that pulled her under and kept her there. Back in the kitchen, the lights felt too bright. Her parents stood by the sink. Her mother was shaking. Her father held her in his arms, both of them trembling now. And then her mother broke. She wept into his chest and wailed, a sound that seemed to tear her open. Why, she cried, why couldn't she have stayed normal? Just once, God, just once, I want my normal daughter back. Her father pulled her close. They sobbed together. But I just stood there, confused, cold, empty. I took a step forward and asked quietly, "What do you mean? Your only child? What are you talking about?" No answer. "Please," I begged. "What's going on?" Silence. I reached out, tapped her father's shoulder. Nothing. No reaction. His body didn't even shift beneath the touch. I stepped around to face them. "Please," I repeated, louder this time. "Tell me what's happening." Nothing. Not a flinch, not a blink. It was as if I wasn't there. A panic swelled inside me, thick and all-consuming. My vision tunneled. A ball of nerves dropped into my gut like a stone. My hands began to shake. My breath quickened, uneven, shallow. This wasn't right. None of it was right. I was in a house I didn't belong in, with people who didn't see me, with a girl I loved who was vanishing in front of me, mentally, physically, spiritually. I needed to run. I turned and bolted up the stairs, feet pounding the steps 2 at a time. I slammed back into Marianne's room. She wasn't sleeping. She was lying perfectly still in bed, her eyes open but distant, staring past the ceiling. The wound above her eye had crusted slightly now, dried blood clinging to her temple. I moved to her side. "Marianne?" I whispered. No answer. I touched her hand gently, and she flinched, pulled in slightly, then turned to face me. Her pupils were wide, her face pale, her voice barely above a breath. "Michael," she said. "I'm sorry." A pause. "I need to let you go." "Let me go?" I repeated, stunned. "How? Why would you say that?" I stepped closer, desperate. "You don't need to let me go. I love you, Marianne. I want to help you. I want to nurse you back to health. Please don't do this. I love you." It was the first time I had said it. The first time I let it escape my lips. And for a moment, she seemed to soften. Her eyes swelled with tears, her body trembling as if she were fighting for something, clinging to the last thread that tethered us together. And then she spoke the words that shattered my world into a million pieces. "Michael," she whispered, "you died in that car accident, with your parents, 2 years ago. Why don't you remember?" The floor beneath me disappeared. My surroundings dulled. The warmth in the room dissipated like a fading dream. I blinked, hard. The world felt unreal. No heartbeat, no breath, no sensation in my skin, just static. I whispered to myself, "This is a nightmare." I tried to jump, move, feel something. Nothing. Marianne slowly got out of bed and approached me, calling my name as if testing for a response, for any sign that I was still there in some recognizable form. "I'm here," I said. She looked toward my voice and spoke again. "We dated for 6 years before you passed away," she said. "We were everything to each other. You were my world." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "And after the accident, something broke inside me. I couldn't accept it. My mind, it shifted, like a radio tuning into the wrong frequency. Messages, visions, memories that weren't real started flooding in. You kept showing up, and I wanted to believe." She wiped her eyes, then continued. "I was hospitalized for weeks. Eventually, they sent me home, sedated, on antipsychotics. The doctors called it a break. That's the word they used, a break. And I was doing better. I was stable, until I saw you again on that bus. Or maybe I just imagined it. I don't know anymore." Her voice faltered, trembling with fear and sorrow. "Maybe your spirit found me. Maybe I invented everything. But Michael, I feel you. The real you. I know you're here, but you're starting to drift, and I can't keep doing this to myself or to my parents. She took a deep breath and let the last truth fall like a blade. I never had a sister, she said. That was me. I hurt myself to cope, to punish myself for still being alive when you weren't. I could barely stand. My knees buckled beneath me as she said the final words. I love you forever, Michael. But please, let me go. The room flickered. A ringing began to build in my ears, a high-pitched tone that seemed to stretch across every wall, every surface. I reached out for her, but my hand passed through hers like light through fog. And then, silence. I woke up. My alarm was blaring beside me. The room was drenched in sweat. My sheets clung to my body, my skin cold and clammy. My breath was ragged. My heart thudded, slow and heavy, like it had been waiting for me to return. It had been a dream. Or had it? I stumbled into the shower, dazed, trying to scrub the weight of it all from my skin. The water couldn't touch the feeling. I got dressed. Same routine, same steps as always. I stepped outside. The air was brisk, the sky pale, the streets still wet from last night's rain. I made my way to the bus stop. Same corner, same route. The B42 pulled up, groaning to a stop. I boarded. Same faces, same tired commuters. The city grinding forward like it always did. And then I saw her, Mary Ann, running late, breathless, her bag swinging across her back as she sprinted toward the stop on Avenue N, just like the first time. I froze. Was this happening again? A glitch in time? A memory? Or a haunting? She stepped onto the bus. Her eyes passed over me. No recognition. No panic. No fear. Just normalcy. She sat a few rows away, pulled a book from her bag, and began to read. I stared at her, heart pounding. Alive? Dead? Somewhere in between. And all I could think was, what if this wasn't a dream?
You've just heard the story of Michael and Mary Ann, or perhaps just one version of it. To Michael, it feels like a beginning, a chance meeting on a Brooklyn bus, a spark of something real, something worth chasing. But this time, something's different. This time, he wakes with a faint memory he can't shake, the aftertaste of a dream, a strange weight in his chest. This time, when he sees Mary Ann running to catch the bus, it feels familiar. He remembers something, not clearly, not yet, but enough. A laugh, a wound, a kiss in a park, the ache of having already lost her once before. He doesn't know he's dead, not yet, but this is the first time he's sensed the loop. The first time he's felt the story pulling at its own edges. The first time the illusion doesn't fully hold. And maybe that's how it begins, not with revelation, but with the soft, persistent flicker of déjà vu. Because this isn't just a ghost story. It's a story about grief that lingers beyond the grave, about memory that won't stay buried, about love that refuses to let go, even when it should. It's about what's left behind when the body dies, and what loops endlessly when the soul can't. Michael is stuck between moments, between truths, and Mary Ann is trying to heal on the other side of a door he can't quite pass through. Some stories don't end, some hauntings don't unravel all at once, and some ghosts don't remember who they are until they've relived it enough times to feel the seams.